He said, me and my son are going to go yonder, and me and my son, are going to worship, and me and the boy, are going to come back from our worship experience. Now, notice what he called worship. They didn't know. Isaac didn't know. Abraham knew. He was about to walk up there and sacrifice his son because God asked him to obey, and Abraham called that worship. Ain't nobody in this tent or online that would call that worship without knowing this verse. I'm going to go cut my boy up. I'm going to burn my boy. I'm going to watch the whole agonizing, terrorizing process, and I'm going to call it worship. You know what's interesting about the first mention? When he uses the word worship, there's no screens around. He uses the word worship, there's no drum set around. He uses the word worship, there's no pulpit around. There's no offering buckets around. There's no keyboard around. There's no guitar around. Nothing. No tent. You see, what we call worship is really nothing more than an expression of what our worship really is and who we are really worshiping. Worship's not music. Worship's not just being in a tent. Worship's not dancing. Worship's not flags. Worship's not words on the screen. That's the outflow of our worship. But worship only means one thing. And it's the first thing it meant the very first time it's ever mentioned in the Bible. Worship was not about style. It was not about denomination. It was not about music. Worship was about obedience. And I don't care what you wear, and I don't care what you sing. If you don't obey God, you are bankrupt spiritually. Do you hear me, church? And I know a lot of churches, and our brother talked about them, and we need to crank it up and talk more about them. They talk about worship, 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 worship. And all they're doing is singing a bunch of vain, repetitious songs, and there's no obedience in their heart to the gospel of Jesus Christ. And the first time worship is mentioned in the whole Bible, it's about sacrifice and obedience. And we've raised a generation of people that talk about how much they love a Jesus that they don't even obey. Oh, Brother Locke, when it all comes down to it. Time out. It has come down to it. Stop saying that. We're there right now. We're there right now. Well, when it all comes down to it, I'm going to go to jail for my faith. Everybody that says that don't even go to church for their faith. Right? Don't even live for a God that they talk about dying for. Well, you know, Brother Locke, I'm going to die for Jesus. Really? I just want you to come to church more than once a month. You're going to die for somebody you don't even live for? You're going to die for someone your kids never hear you talk about? You're going to die for someone you won't even bow your head and pray to in a Cracker Barrel lest somebody sees you and gets offended? You're going to die for somebody that you're afraid to talk about on social media because of cancel culture? Let me tell you what real cancel culture is. When Jesus says, I never knew you, depart from me, ye that work iniquity, into everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. Because Jesus said, if you're ashamed of me before men, I'll be ashamed of you before my Father, which is in heaven. That's a cancel culture I don't want to have no part in. The culture can cancel me all they want to, but I want to make sure that if I'm talking about dying for somebody, I'm at least living for them consistently. Am I making sense?